Welcome into Sideline Signal. I'm Andrew, as always, joined by my co-host Tyler. We got a lot of news surrounding the NFL this week. So first, we're going to go into the big trades from today, Tuesday, October 15th. And then we're going to go through this weekend's slate of football, talk about some of our favorite games of the week and some of the predictions. How are you doing today, Tyler?
I'm doing great. The entire league was shook today. Of course, Devontae Adams getting traded to the Jets, and then Amari Cooper getting traded to the Bills. And if you watched last night's Monday Night Football game, I didn't really think either, the Bills definitely needed a wide receiver, but I wasn't sure if the Jets needed a wide receiver. But there we go. We got two stars. Adams reunited with Rodgers, and then Amari Cooper gets to see what he can do, probably with the best quarterback that he's played with. Sorry, Cowboys fans. Josh Allen's better than Dak. We'll see what they can do. It's going to be really exciting to see these guys out there, and just speaks to how crazy the NFL is, and how much winning means. Is that after one game, or I'm sure they had it planned out, but after one game, it's that split reaction. Hey, we got to go get our guy, and they were able to do that. So pretty nuts.
Yeah, and so we'll go a little bit into the deals that were made for both teams, talk about if we like the trade, if we don't. It's clear to say that after Drake May's first start, the AFC East is definitely prepping to try to beat him. So, but let's start with the Jets. Like you said, they traded for Devontae Adams from the Las Vegas Raiders. They gave up a conditional third round pick, which would be upgraded to a second round pick if Devontae Adams goes all pro or if the Jets make the AFC Championship game this year. The Jets will also consume the bulk of his salary. And looking at that, the conditional third for the Raiders plus the loss of salary, even though the Raiders will still incur the dead cap hit of 15 million over the next 2 years. Do you think this is a good deal for both teams? How do you feel from this side seeing the trade?
So I'm kind of in the middle here. I don't think like I feel like Jets fans, they've been waiting for this since Aaron Rodgers got to New York, basically. I felt like there's been rumors about this happening for a year and a half now. Now that it has happened, I think it happened at the wrong time. Honestly, if they had fired Robert Saleh in the offseason, gotten a new offensive head coach, and then this trade happened, I'd be ecstatic. But they're sitting here at 2-4. The wide receivers aren't the problem. You saw Alan Lazard, he went off. Garrett Wilson's been very good. Their offense hasn't been the problem. So you're kind of just adding to an already crowded receiver room. And the odd one out is going to be Mike Williams, who they just signed to a pretty big contract. So that's kind of a waste there. But for the Jets, obviously, you get to see now what Rodgers and Adams can do. It's been a while since they were on the same team, obviously. But it will add to their explosiveness for sure. It's just another guy to cover. And now who does your number one cornerback cover here? Is it Devontae or is it Garrett Wilson? And the other one's going to be facing probably a nickel or slot guy, and that's going to be an issue for a lot of teams. There's not many teams that can cover that, and the Jets are actually one of the teams that could cover that with DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. But for the Jets, we'll see. We'll see. I got it. The jury's out for me because they're in a bad spot, and getting a wide receiver of all the things was not really high on my list for them. For the Raiders, they did what they needed to do. This wasn't going to end well. It was either he was going to sit out. Like I could definitely see that hamstring injury just being season long because he didn't want to play, and that's no even offense to the Raiders. It's just he didn't want to be there anymore. And taking that cap hit, the hard cap hit, stinks, but at least you get the money, the salary that you don't have to pay him when he's not playing for your team. Who knows? Maybe he does get all pro, or maybe the Jets do make it that far in the playoffs. I mean, I'm sure you're rooting for him now, Andrew, as a Raiders fan, but they did what they needed to do. It's not a great feeling, obviously. You can attest to that when you get your chance to talk. But eh, I'm not overly eager for either side in this trade. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm bigger on the side of the Jets because it's a longer term. Obviously, he still has a few years left on his contract. So I think obviously right now, the Jets, it's still up in the air, looking more or less than yes that they'll make the playoffs. But at the end of the day, you're still getting Devontae Adams for 2 years at the minimum. So I think that's good. And looking at the Raiders, I mean, it's bad business in my opinion. like I said, it's good that they're getting the salary off the books, but you still take the dead cap hit. I was really looking to see if the Raiders could get at least a second round. The conditional third, he's not going to go all pro having sat out 4 games. And right now, the Jets don't look like the team to make the AFC Championship. I'm happy for Devontae because I didn't want him to stay on the Raiders if he was unhappy, and he's too good to be on a team that won't compete. But at the end of the day, too, this is a guy who 2 years ago was one of the top receivers in the NFL. And talent wise, he still is one of the top receivers. But statistically, it's not there. They haven't gotten him a quarterback to really get him back to that level since Derek Carr's left. And yeah, it's really frustrating to see that the best that we could do is get a conditional third round pick. Um, I'm not really hopeful, and with the Raiders looking like they're in sell and rebuild mode, it's definitely frustrating to see that all we could get was a third round pick.
Yeah, and it makes sense, but I will say this, and I actually kind of want to get your thoughts on this. The way that Adams was acting in the media and probably behind closed doors as well was not positive. I'm sure that was a negative effect in the locker room. And then also, would the Raiders be 2-4 if Devontae Adams played every game? Do you think?
Yeah, because I'll be honest, maybe you might get an extra win, but to be honest, we didn't have good quarterback play. Like there's a reason Gardner Minshew's been benched and Aiden O'Connell did what he could against the Steelers, but obviously he didn't have Jacoby Myers or Devontae Adams. But right now, I mean, this team is a few pieces away on both all sides of the ball from being really competitive. And I think, was he healthy? I still think there's that frustration from Devontae of the situation the Raiders are in, their lack of ability to win games. So even if he is healthy, I don't think we're seeing the top level of Devontae Adams because there's still that mental side of the game that, I'm not going to say he's lacking because obviously he has mental toughness, but at the end of the day, those frustrations always seep into your play. And so I think with or without him, the Raiders would still at best be 3-3, but 2-4, I wouldn't have been surprised with or without him.
Well, there you go. He's not helping you win now. You're going to be the same team anyway. You get a pick out of it. That's kind of how I looked at it. Similar to when the Giants traded OBJ, that we got those picks. We weren't going to, yes, OBJ was fun to watch, and yes, he made explosive plays every week. But was he going to help us win now or in the future? Probably not. So that's kind of the deal that I'm looking at there. And then do you think that Devontae's kind of strain with the Raiders, that relationship, him leaving could be a positive for the locker room? And I know it stinks, obviously. He was one of the most talented players on that team. But do you think it could be positive?
Definitely. I mean, it's always that next man up mentality, and frustrations are never a good thing to have in a locker room. You know that. We both know that. Players who are unhappy will always have an impact on the locker room. But yeah, obviously, it didn't. His career with the Raiders wasn't what was expected out of it. Very frustrating as a fan, but I don't put the blame on him. But looking at it now that he's gone, I mean, again, the Raiders are definitely going into a tank mode, and they're trying to rebuild. So having the focus be on some of our younger guys, I think will ultimately benefit guys like Trey Tucker, who's had a solid, first rookie year, and then this start of the season has been pretty good. Brock Bowers has been really solid in his rookie year so far. So being able to highlight the guys that should the offense and just the team as a whole should be built around is ultimately going to be good. Antonio Pierce, the players love him. So just being able to ride with him, I think it will, the mood won't be good because they're 2-4 and they're in a tank mode. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be better now that we've gotten guys that are frustrated out of the locker room.
I agree 1,000%. I think that'll be the beneficiary. And then for the Jets, we may not see him this Sunday. Obviously, he has that hamstring. Jeff Ulrich he didn't really say much, even though Devontae all of a sudden his hamstring feels pretty great, which is interesting to see, seeing that he probably could have played this past Sunday, if I'm going to be completely honest, the way that he was preparing for it and based on the injury that he had. But we'll see when he does debut, and that'll be exciting for the Jets. And then the slate is clean for the Raiders. Now they can move on to a Devontae-less future, and they can start building towards those weapons, as you mentioned, in Tucker and Bowers, which will be good for years to come, hopefully. All right, moving on to the other trade. The Jets played the Bills last night, and the Bills make the big move. Amari Cooper moves from Cleveland to Buffalo. What a city switch there. Lots to do there. Nightlife. Oh man. But Buffalo gets Amari Cooper and then a 2025 sixth round pick in a swap with Cleveland. Cleveland gets a 2025 third, and then they get actually, sorry, a 2026 seventh. So it wasn't a swap there. So the Bills actually get a sixth round pick in this year's draft as well as Cooper. So Andrew, what are your thoughts on this trade and how does it affect both sides?
Yeah, I think this is a really good trade on both sides. The Bills were a team that obviously were desperately looking for a wide receiver one, but they were having some cap space issues. So a guy like Devontae Adams was pretty unlikely that they would land him. But I think Amari Cooper, we've been able to see it in the media and both in his play this season. He was very disgruntled. He wasn't happy. He wanted out. He didn't like playing with Deshaun Watson, and the offense was really struggling. So the Bills get a guy who wanted change and has the ability and the talent to be a wide receiver one to come in. And cap space wise, they're only paying, I think it's 804,000 for the 1 year. It's a rental because he has 1 year left on his contract. So they're paying essentially nothing to get in a wide receiver one. And I think this receiver room got infinitely better. I mean, Amari Cooper's going to come in. We've seen what he's been able to do sometimes with Cleveland, but obviously prior with Dallas and the Raiders. So it's a talented player, and it's going to help Khalil Shakir. It's not going to put so much pressure on him. Honestly, it's going to help Keon Coleman too, who has less pressure and less eyes on him to constantly perform. And then obviously, the tight end tandem that they have in Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox with James Cook, it just adds that perfect level of balance to the offense. Josh Allen's not going to have to do as much to try to get guys making plays and get guys open because you're going to get in a top level receiver. And then looking at Cleveland, like I said, they're in an interesting space. They're struggling. They don't look good. The offense isn't really moving the ball. Defensively, they've been okay. So to be able to get a third and then a seventh round pick for next year, the seventh, it'll probably end up just being leveraged in a different trade. But still, to get a third round pick is really good. You get to start of like building your draft capital for this draft. But yeah, ultimately they're probably similarly to the Raiders going to start to try to rebuild. So I think it's more balanced than the Devontae Adams trade. I think it's beneficial for both teams.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think it's definitely more balanced. I think both teams got a bit more out of it, and I think it benefits both teams a bit more. Like you said, the Bills, they needed that. They were itching for that number one wide receiver. Diggs was a problem in the locker room. That's why he's not there. So they get Cooper, a guy that has been known to be someone that kind of just buckles up the chin strap, goes out there and plays. Not too much of the talking, which I really like. And then you look, Josh Allen averages the least targets to wide receivers in the NFL at like 7.4, I believe, which is abysmal, especially for a quarterback that's widely considered to be a top five quarterback in this league. So that's going to benefit him a lot. The Bills offense just got way more explosive, especially now that they have a two-game lead over the Jets and the Patriots don't look like they're going to be competitive this year, and the Dolphins would have been competitive with Tua, but not looking so competitive now. They'll be able to build that chemistry without the like I don't want to say without the pressure because the Jets could definitely turn it around, and the Dolphins by some miracle could too. But without the pressure of like having a team hot on their tail. Like they have time to build this connection, if that makes sense. So I think it's going to be great. I don't know how defenses are going to cover them, to be completely honest. Shakir was very good for what he was. I know he's not considered a wide receiver one, but he was doing his job before he got injured. Keon Coleman, we got to see a bit more from him. He's been lazy and route running and stuff like that, but maybe getting a guy like Cooper to kind of mentor him can benefit that. And then James Cook obviously didn't play last night, but he's explosive as well as the two tight ends. So this is going to be really good for Buffalo. For the Browns, they're going to clean house. So it's simple as that. Deshaun Watson's going to be gone. Stefanski's got to be gone. So you just get more draft picks. That's really all it is. Browns fans, you're going to hate this because the team is going to be unwatchable, but the team was unwatchable before, if we're being completely honest. Deshaun Watson, that contract's the worst in history. Really makes me think of what this would have looked like if they kept and stuck around with Baker Mayfield. If Baker Mayfield figured it out like he has, and stayed there, we'd be having a really different conversation about this Browns team. But it's time. A third round pick is real nice. That seventh round pick, like you said, will probably be leveraged in a trade. So it's just another bargaining chip. That's all it really is. And that's pretty big. Um, I wish I could sit here and tell you that there's someone that's going to take up Cooper's mantle, but Jerry Jeudy hasn't done anything. And I can't really say that these wide receivers are good or bad just because of how porous Deshaun Watson has played and how terrible he is as a quarterback right now. So yeah, I think it benefits the Browns, but I can't really make anything out of their future outlook just because Deshaun Watson's been so terrible. And if I was them, I'd be Jameis Winston would be the starter by now. Why not? What do you have to lose? But we'll see. I think the Bills just got a lot more explosive, as I said, and then the Browns are building towards the future.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of takeaways for both sides, both teams. I think this is a better deal because, to be honest, the Browns got more for less when comparing this to the Devontae Adams trade. Devontae, all the Jets had to give up was a conditional third, but you get a third and then a seventh for giving up Amari Cooper. I would argue Devontae Adams is a higher, level of receiver than Cooper. Obviously, they're both elite, but Devontae Adams is at the top for me. So it's really interesting to see how all the different organizations kind of dealed out these trades.
Yeah, and it will be. And this kind of is the perfect segue into my question for you before we move on to our recaps here. Now that these trades are settled, we know they're going to be there, and whether or not they play this weekend or in 2 weeks is really the question. But which player, Adams on the Jets or Cooper on the Bills, is going to have a bigger impact to their offense? Which do you think? Maybe even better stats. It can be down to that, but which one do you think has a bigger impact?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to go with Amari Cooper just for the fact that, there wasn't a clear wide receiver one in terms of ability on the Bills before this deal was done. Obviously, Shakir right now has been playing really well. He had that injury last week and then he played a little last night. But, being able to get Amari Cooper in, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Just having that extra layer of elite talent to be your wide receiver one is ultimately going to help spread the ball out. It's going to help them. Josh Allen has another tool to kind of play with. So looking at it, and right now the Bills 4-2 looks like they're going to be the runaway at the current moment for the division. Getting Amari Cooper in is only going to help them get better. And like I said, it's a 1 year rental. So if he doesn't, then it's not like they're losing a lot of money on him. But I think this is a perfect fit for him. I'm taking Amari Cooper because a lot of mouths to feed on that Jets team. Devontae has had a hamstring injury, which can be nagging. It could come back. And the Jets just look disgruntled right now. They look disorganized. And I think the Bills are in a better position, and getting Amari Cooper in is only going to help them more.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. You took the thoughts right out of my mind on that one. And I could easily see Amari Cooper signing an extension with the Bills after this year if all goes well. But this just launched them, like the only quarterback that can really do it without a wide receiver one, it seems, is Mahomes, at least at current standing. Lamar can do it as well, but they don't have the explosive passing offense without that wide receiver one. He's still amazing. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. But now I want to see if Josh Allen can kind of raise to that tier. Because, Diggs, he was a personality problem. He was amazing, but Cooper is better. 100% Amari Cooper is better than Stephon Diggs. Sorry, Stephon. But Amari, he's going to do some great things. I think Devontae is going to make a big difference on the Jets as well. But I agree. They're disgruntled. They have no identity right now as a team, as an offense, and you're just going to slide Devontae Adams in there. Hamstrings are nagging, like you said. They're the hardest body part to kind of predict and heal in terms of like even the smallest injuries with a hamstring. But for Devontae Adams, like yeah, like who's going to be the odd man out? And you look at that, he's taking Garrett Wilson's spot at the X. Lazard has been playing inside a lot more, so I do wonder if Garrett moves to the slot and maybe that helps them in the long run. Or if Devontae moves to the slot and you keep Garrett out wide, we'll see what that configuration looks like. But for the Bills, I know where Amari Cooper is going to be. He's going to be in that X spot. He's going to be outside with Shakir in the middle. I think it benefits everyone else, as you said, not as much pressure on them. So I'm going to go with Cooper and the Bills as the bigger the more impact when the season comes to a close. But we will see. That is the exciting part about this kind of stuff is that we get to see it all unfold in the coming weeks.
Definitely, yeah. It's gonna be fun to watch. I think both teams got better, so I guess we just got to play the waiting game and see which one will make a bigger impact. Moving on now, we're going to go to this week's slate of games. We're going to go through some of our favorite games of the week, and then give a little bit of our perspective, and then predictions for how we think the game's going to go. Starting off with the Thursday night game as the Denver Broncos travel to the New Orleans Saints. I'll let you start this one off. How do you see this game going?
So this is an interesting game. Bo Nix, this is the hardest road game he's had to play so far. And then you got a guy, Spencer Rattler, who made his first career start this past Sunday. Showed some flashes, also had some ugly moments with some interceptions. It'll be really interesting to see what happens here. I'm going to go with the Broncos. I think the Broncos go into New Orleans. It's a Thursday night game. So, like, the way that I feel about Thursday night games is that it doesn't matter who's home and away. It's which team was more rested, which one had better practices during the week, because it is that short week. I feel like not because the atmosphere is any worse on a Thursday than it would be a Sunday or a Monday, but just because it's a short week, it has more to do with the players and getting prepared to that. I could easily see Bo Nix struggling at the beginning with the sound of the Superdome, but I'm going to take Bo Nix. I believe in him. I think he's making some solid strides. I think the Broncos defense is also getting right there. I don't know if Pat Surtain has been ruled out yet. He got injured last week, but that kind of changes my opinion. I think this is going to be real close. But the Saints also traditionally struggle on Thursday night. They are 0 for their last 5 Thursday night football games, and they haven't covered in a single one of them. And I know the spread is only -1 for this game, but I like the Broncos. I would say by a field goal. I just like the position that they're in. Rattler's still finding the ropes. So I'm going to go with Denver there for me. So who do you got?
We had it the same way. I'm taking the Broncos. The spread I saw was 2.5 for the Saints, but I'm also taking the Broncos to win a close one. Injury concerns on both teams, like you said, Pat Surtain, and I saw obviously Carr is doubtful for this game, so it looks like Rattler's going to play. But then, players like Alvin Kamara, Rashid Shaheed, and Olave, I saw were all questionable. But obviously, questionable is always, you know, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Once they go down to doubtful, that's when you get concerned. So I'm sure at least potentially all three of them will still play, but there's a concern. They all have knocks, and then this being a short week, obviously there's concern there. But like you said, the sound might be an impact on Bo Nix early on, but he's really stepped into his own the last few weeks. He's looked really impressive. Obviously, he kind of shook the rough performances early on. He's getting more settled. He looks more composed. Even though they lost to the Chargers last week, I thought he had a really great performance. He's running the ball more, which I think caters to his play style. And, you got a guy like Troy Franklin, his first career touchdown pass, which was great to see. I don't like how cold the Saints have been since they started 2-0. So I think right now the Broncos just slightly edge them out. Like you said, I'm taking them on a close game, maybe by a field goal, but I'm taking the Broncos.
Yeah, and we could be seeing a classic mid-off. That's basically kind of what we're getting at. Andrew and I love to use that term there. So I'm going to stamp it with that one, but it could be exciting. Like, as long as it's close, it's a pretty exciting game, no matter how sloppy. And we get to see possibly the future of the league here with Rattler and Nix. Who knows? I think Spencer Rattler is kind of earning his spot as the heir to the Saints throne. So we'll see how he plays. Moving on to our second game, and this one's going to be an interesting one. The Texans travel to Lambeau to play the Green Bay Packers. Both teams have looked explosive. Both teams are at the top of their respective conferences right now in terms of contenders. So, Andrew, who you got in this one?
Yeah, so to start, this is obviously a great quarterback matchup. We get Jordan Love versus CJ Stroud. Both teams are coming off of a win against an inferior opponent. Obviously, the Texans just beat New England and the Packers beat Arizona. But looking at this game, I think this game is more important to Green Bay than it is for the Texans. Green Bay kind of need to win this game because this is one of their tougher games on their schedule. And I mean, looking at the NFC North, they're tied for last place in the NFC North right now at 4-2. So, I mean, this division is extremely, extremely competitive. Going down the stretch to try to make a wild card, they're going to need a win like this. It's a tough game. Obviously, they're at home. But right now, I really, really like the way Green Bay's playing. I think Jaden Reed and Christian Watson, Romeo Dubs, all of them. Obviously, Romeo Dubs has had some off-field issues, but they played really well against Arizona this week. Obviously, I think the biggeth impact in this game is going to be the fact that Nico Collins is out injured. You're just always going to see that when he's out, they're losing just that added layer of lethalness on that offense for the Texans. Obviously, they just got Joel Mixon back, so that's a help. And CJ Stroud has not played a bad game, in my opinion, in the NFL. But the fact it's at Lambeau, the added pressure that the Packers need to win to stay really competitive in this division, I'm taking the Packers. I think it'll be close too. This is one of the best matchups of the week. I expect both Love and Stroud to have good games, but I think at the end of the day, Jair is going to be on Stephon Diggs. I think that'll be, uh, you know, quiet in terms of I think Jair will kind of lock him down. And then looking at it without Nico Collins, I don't know if Tank Dell is going to be able to do enough. So give me the Packers. Could be close, could be a blowout, but I think it's going to be closer than that. But yeah, give me the Packers in this one.
Yeah, and I wish we disagreed on this because this would be a really good game to disagree on. But I'm going to go with Green Bay as well. If you told me in week one that we'd be sitting here, the Packers 4-2, I wouldn't have believed you after Jordan Love got injured. But I feel really good still about my Super Bowl prediction of them making it because they're so versatile. Like you said, they probably have the deepest wide receiver core in the league. All guys that are under the age of 26, all figuring it out, all explosive, all got the speed, the ability to run routes. It's just great to see, and they're so multiple. Even without a guy like AJ Dillon, which was such a big part of their offense last year, they're getting it done. Josh Jacobs is getting more carries. We saw that last week, and that's a big part. For the Texans, this one's going to be hard. Like you said, with no Nico Collins, is Tank Dell going to be able to blow the top off of this defense simply because Diggs isn't really known as that vertical deep threat? He's more of the intermediate guy. So Tank Dell is really the guy that you kind of look at to try to get deep, and I don't see it. I'm not seeing it. Xavier McKinney has had as good of a season as you could hope for to start the year, and I expect he probably gets a pick just because of the way that it's trending. It's more likely that he gets an interception than not, honestly, which is pretty crazy. But I like this game to be really close. The Texans looked amazing last week against a pretty, I would say, above average Patriots defense at the very least. To be able to put up that many points was really impressive. And then also, Joe Mixon's fully healthy now. Obviously, played last week, but now he's back in. This will be an explosive game. And it's going to come down to, in my opinion, the weather. It's going to be freezing as we start to get into that fall, winter weather, especially in Green Bay. And then Braden Narvison for the Packers, the kicker. He has been nothing short of lackluster. Oh my goodness. He's been bad. So I wouldn't be surprised if it came down to his foot. I know I've been saying this a lot with obviously the college football predictions and everything, but kickers are extremely important. Andrew knows that for sure. To be able to have trust in this guy, like if they need to kick that game-winning field goal, I don't know if the Packers are fully behind him at this point, with how inconsistent he's been. But he has a chance to change that narrative. I'm taking the Packers by a field goal here at home, and it'll be a great game. And I want to watch this one, even though the Giants are playing at one as well. So I will be definitely tuning in. It should be really explosive, and we know we're seeing the future of the NFL with these two guys in Shroud and Love as well.
Definitely gonna be a great matchup. I like that we both have the same team, but definitely gonna be an interesting one to watch. Gonna be a lot of takeaways for both teams. Moving on to what you just talked about, though, your New York Giants are hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. Saquon Barkley's return to the Meadowlands. I'll let you take this one away. You'll get the brunt of your takes. How do you see this game going? Are your Giants gonna come away with the win?
So Daniel Jones is tied for the most games in NFL history with no touchdown passes and one interception at home. I was there on Sunday for the Bengals where he decided to roll it to Jermaine Pratt as they were about to score a touchdown. I cannot, in right conscience, pick the Giants. No matter how bad the Eagles have looked, I can't do it. I really hope Saquon gets booed because I'm salty. And I know it's not actually his fault, and I get it, but I'm salty about it. Like, why'd you go to the Eagles? Besides the point, I think the Eagles handle them pretty easily. I'm not gonna lie. They might be close just because the Eagles are bad, and Nick Sirianni is one of the worst coaches in the NFL. I don't care if he's talking back to the fans; he's terrible. He's doing that to make up for it. But I mean, this could get really ugly. It reminds me a lot of the game. I, it might have been 2 years ago when the Giants made the playoffs that the Eagles were literally up 28 nothing like that in the regular season, not even the playoff game. And it was just so bad. And you could tell that the Eagles were just miles better. And I kind of see something like that happening. I hope not. I hope it's close, but I'm going to go by with the Eagles by, let's say, 13 points. Saquon, I don't think he goes off simply because our D line has been playing amazing these last 3 games. I don't think he gets a lot of yards, but I don't think it really matters because I don't think, I know I'm saying I don't think a lot, but I don't think that Jalen Hurts is going to be able to. He's going to be able to use his legs. He's not going to be able to be contained. They haven't been able to have an answer for AJ Brown in every single matchup the Giants have played against the Eagles to this point. So I expect him to have a big game. They also are terrible at covering tight ends. Dallas Goedert, I don't know if he plays, but even Calcaterra, I could see having a big game, and Devonta Smith underneath. So the Giants might be able to hang in there offensively, honestly. I know I'm saying that they only scored 7 points, but the Eagles defense is not good. But I'm going to go Eagles by 13 or so points, unfortunately. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we went the same way, and this is just looking at it. Both teams have been really inconsistent this season. Neither team really looks like the competitor for this division. It really seems like it's going to come down to Dallas and Washington, although Washington look like the front runners. But yeah, looking at the Eagles, I mean, it's good that they finally have AJ Brown back. I think it definitely hurt them having him be out for a good portion of the season that we've played so far. But that definitely helped them this last weekend. Coming into this game, that's going to be a massive issue for the Giants. You spoke about it a little, but Nick Sirianni has lost his mind. First he shaves his head, he's yelling at the fans. Things seems like things are falling apart there, but at the end of the day, with how unpredictable these division games are in the NFC East, I really got to go down to the team with the better roster, and I think right now that's the Eagles. I think it'll be close for a while, but I think towards the second half and the end of the second half, I think the Eagles will slowly start to run away with it. I think turnovers are going to be an issue, and obviously the Giants not having Malik Neighbors with the concussion has hurt them since he's gone out. I think if he doesn't play, I don't know if he's projected, but I'm sure it's doubtful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna err on the side that he doesn't play, and if he doesn't, it's gonna hurt them because they can't really move the ball without him. I'm taking the Eagles. I think 10 to 2 score is definitely fitting.
Yeah, it's really not looking great for the Giants, but we're gonna move on to possibly the best matchup of the weekend. Two exciting teams at the very least, as the Detroit Lions go to Minneapolis to play the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are still undefeated. The Lions coming off that massive win over the Cowboys in Dallas, but also lose Aiden Hutchinson to a gruesome leg injury. So that'll be pretty impactful there. So, Andrew, who you going with in this one?
I'm taking the Vikings, and I think it's going to be a really close game. And look, obviously they're coming off a bye, but what more can you ask out of the Minnesota Vikings from this season? Sam Darnold's been electric. Justin Jefferson looks like, the top level wide receiver. He looks like the wide receiver one in the league. Aaron Jones has been running the ball pretty well for them. TJ Hawkinson is, starting to practice, so they're looking forward to getting him back soon. And defensively, they've been great. This is, a tough division matchup. It's the two teams at the top of the NFC North. Obviously, they're going to Minnesota, which I think favors the Vikings. But just looking at it right now, I think that loss of Aiden Hutchinson, obviously, it was gruesome and it's heartbreaking to see for the Lions because he's a top edge rusher in the league. But I think that's ultimately going to impact their ability to pass rush this game. And getting to Sam Darnold is something that hasn't happened a lot, and that would be a key for them to win if they can get sacks on him. Don't give him time to throw to Justin Jefferson. It would be the key, but losing Hutchinson's going to hurt them. I do expect Brian Branch to have another big game. Obviously, he was massive in that win over Dallas. He had a multi pick game. I think it's going to be close. Lions aren't going to die because they have a high-powered offense as well. I expect Sam Laporta to have a big game in it, but I think at the end of the day, Vikings get down the stretch, could be a game-winning field goal, but I've been Vikings in a close one.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the Vikings as well. Really because of that bye. It benefits them a whole lot because I would argue that the Detroit Lions, aside from Mahomes, is the hardest game to scheme. The hardest offense to scheme against. And having that extra week, gives Brian Flores all the time that he needs, and that is great. He has been amazing schematically. They've been able to do everything. They're the top defense in the league right now, which is not something I expected going into it. Losing Aiden Hutchinson for the Lions on the defensive side will impact them. I agree with you there. It's going to be a lot harder to get pressure. And I wonder if they're forced to blitz a lot more, play man coverage, which benefits the Vikings a lot. If I am the Lions, I am making sure Terrion Arnold is nowhere near Justin Jefferson at all times, because that is a free 15 at the very least every single play. This one isn't going to be ugly. I expect it actually to be a high scoring shootout type affair here where they just keep going back and forth. And what like Sam Darnold, he's got to be MVP front runner right now. He's looked great against every task that he's had to face. And I agree with you. I think it's a one possession game, but I'm going to go a bit further than a field goal. I think they win by a touchdown. It might be whoever has the ball last type deal. But I'm going to take Sam Darnold to lead the Vikings down. Also getting back Aaron Jones. I know he left early against the Jets in London. He'll be back. So that'll be big for them as well. But I got Sam Darnold leading them down the field on a game-winning touchdown drive at the end of the game. But this one's going to be a classic. I really see it.
I agree, and I think this is going to be a game that we look at the end of the season when teams finally get settled in with the playoffs. That is one of the best games of the season. It could have impacts. Who knows? I mean, this could make or break team seasons based on the first, top of the line matchup in their division. Moving on now, we have a rematch of last year's Super Bowl as the Kansas City Chiefs travel to the San Francisco 49ers. What do you think will happen? Do you think the Niners have enough in them to knock off Kansas City?
I wish I could sit here and say yes. But no, I don't. I really don't. The Chiefs play the ugliest brand of football this year and just win. That's all they do. They just win. They win somehow. They win some way. The Niners looked great on Thursday night against the Seahawks. They also get that extra rest heading into this game. But the defense has been bad. I know. I would argue that the Seahawks offense was a bit overrated heading into that game, just based on what I watched when the Giants played them and beat them. Um, I really think that the Niners defense has just not found itself yet. Fred Warner is amazing, but other than that, I can't really put my finger on a single guy that's stuck out to me in terms of being a great Niner defense, like a great piece of it. So I'm going to go with Mahomes. They just score enough points to win. It's probably going to be an ugly game. I could see it being like 21-17, and we're sitting here like, how did the Niners not win this game? Kind of like the Super Bowl, honestly, where the Chiefs might ball control it a bit, kind of just leak down the field 5 yards at a time, and then Kelsey breaks one at the end of the game, winning the game. So I'm going to go Chiefs by a touchdown again. I really wish I could say it, and I hope the Niners win. I do, because I like it when, the best teams beat each other. They are favored in this game, but the last time the Chiefs were underdogs was that Super Bowl game, and I just can't bet against in my right mind Mahomes. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs in a close one.
Yeah, I also have the Chiefs, except I have them by two scores. I just right now the Niners don't have anything to prove that they're able to compete in this game. I mean, offensively, they have the talent. They just haven't been able to get it done. And obviously, losing McCaffrey has proven to be the biggest issue in that offense. Obviously, he was the offensive player of the year last year, and they don't run the ball as well. Obviously, they have some success still running. That's not saying that they're bad at it, but looking at it right now. I just think their offense isn't overpowering enough to say that they're going to dominate this defense. Because honestly, the Chiefs' defense has played really, really well this season. And yes, they do play really sloppy offensively. And this isn't necessarily as elite of a Kansas City offense as we've seen over the last few years. But I still think that they're good. And like you said, the biggest thing about Kansas City, they just win. it hurts me to say that because they don't look as good as they have in the past, but they just win football games. And I see it again here. I think Pat Mahomes will just walk in. He'll do his typical Pat Mahomes thing where he'll have a, not the best game, but not anything to be upset about. He'll probably throw for anywhere from 200 to 300 yards, a couple touchdowns, maybe a pick. But ultimately, they'll get the job done. I just don't think this is San Francisco's year.
Yeah, and I wish it could have been, right? Like if the Niners come into this game either undefeated or with just one loss, I'm thinking to myself, holy cow, this is going to be a great game. But I just don't see it. It's just the same kind of thing, and I'm just waiting for a team to beat the Chiefs. I gotta see it. Like it's so infuriating at this point. They have become the Patriots, the Belichick Patriots, to this point, and it's really disappointing for us. It's especially disappointing for you, I'm sure, but it's just so annoying. It's so annoying. It's so infuriating. Andrew and I have talked about this before, so it is not the first time that something like this has come up. As we move on to probably the most important game for these two teams, playing the Sunday night game in Pittsburgh, the New York Jets travel to Pittsburgh after that brutal loss on Monday night. They should have won that game at least 4 or 5 times, so that wasn't fun for them. The Steelers are riding high. They're 4-2. They got the ground game going last week. Who knows who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Steelers going into this one? But Andrew, what are your thoughts? Who you got coming out and getting the victory?
This might be a surprise based on the discussion that we've had in this show, but I'm going to take the Jets on this one. I haven't seen enough offensively out of the Steelers to say that they can kind of run and gun with this team when the Jets are playing well. Obviously, we haven't seen that window yet, but I think now whether or not Devontae plays, we're going to see a happier Aaron Rodgers. We're going to see a more confident Aaron Rodgers. And we saw glimmers of that last night. Obviously, they made it to the red zone in almost every drive. And they had plays, they probably should have beaten Buffalo. And yes, the Steelers did have a good win over the Raiders. They got the run game improved more. But I think the biggest thing is this is going to be a massive distraction now that Russell Wilson is taking first team reps. Obviously, Wilson's been out all season with a calf injury. If he starts, obviously, it's going to be rusty out of him because he hasn't been playing. He's an older quarterback and he's taken 6 weeks off because of an injury. But if they go with Justin Fields, you're losing reps from your starter. He's not training with the first team this week because it's going to Russell Wilson. So there's going to be a confidence issue out of that because he's basically just been told, we don't think you're good enough, but then still getting thrown in to start. Or you get a rusty quarterback. And I think with a team that's already struggled offensively, that's going to cause a lot of issues. But I expect this is the game where the Jets really need to step it up. I think they do. Do I think it's going to have huge weight on how they end the season in terms of their record? Probably not, but this is a game that I pinpoint down in prime time that I think Rodgers will get it done and get the win.
I am just gonna flat out say before I get to my prediction, this is going to be just as bad of a game as last Sunday night's game between the Giants and the Bengals. It is going to be a slop fest. You're going to be asking yourself if it's rugby or if it's football. I doubt both teams get out of the 20s, like the mid 20s in terms of their total points. But I'm going to take the Steelers. We finally disagree on something. Um, we can sit here and make every excuse for the world for the Jets. But I'm tired of it. I'm absolutely tired of it. They were gifted a win by the Bills last night. They played better and they just kept giving away with turnovers. It is the most undisciplined team I've ever watched, ever. And the Steelers are disciplined. That's really the difference. I want to see if penalties play a factor in this because, I mean, even DJ Reed, he went out with a groin. I don't even think that was as bad of an injury. I think that DJ Reed was just being super grabby last night, and they were kind of like, okay, he strained his groin. We're not going to push him. We're going to keep him on the sideline for the rest of the game because he's been bad. So it's just a lot of penalties defensively, a lot of holds, a lot of drive killers, and I don't think you can do that against the Steelers. Steelers are going to take the air out of the football no matter who's going to be that quarterback. If it's Justin Fields, I think they have a better shot at winning this game. But I also think that Russell Wilson is going to be able to hand the ball off 30 to 35 times in this game because the Jets' rush defense has been abysmal to this point. Towards the bottom, they are Let me look. They're 17th. They're middle of the pack. But when you think about what their defense is on paper, that's inexcusable. They're giving up 125 yards a game on the ground, which is not good. You know, you look at a guy, Ray Davis, the backup for the Bills, who came in for James Cook, 20 carries, 97 yards. He averaged 5 yards a carry, basically. And the Bills' O-line, especially run blocking, hasn't been spectacular by any means. That's inexcusable. And then you look at the Steelers, their entire offense is based around the run. And Najee Harris has finally found some fire. It's going to be hard. They rushed for 183 yards in week 6. So I'm going to take the Steelers in a really sloppy game. Chris Boswell, Steelers GOAT, comes through. I'm going to go with the kicker again. Take them by 3. And the Jets just have a back-breaking loss after back-breaking loss. I don't know. But if they were to win this game, that's a whole lot of momentum. That is a whole lot of momentum. But if they don't, the spiral is incoming. They've already started. So this could get ugly, or it could be a huge win for the Jets heading forward.
Yeah, and I think this is a game that's crucially important for both of these teams in terms of realistic expectations for the rest of the season. So both these teams are desperately trying to get this win. I'm glad that we're split on something because I'm sure we won't be split for the game that we're about to cover right now, which is the better of the two Monday night games. The Baltimore Ravens travel to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm sure this one's going to be another consensus pick for us, but who are you taking in this one?
Yeah, I got to go with the Ravens. I can't bet against the Ravens. The Bucks looked great against the Saints, you know, and they looked great against the Falcons as well on that Thursday night game. The offense is feeling itself, but I really think that Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson combo has finally hit their stride, like fully. And the Ravens are going to be able to dominate the time of possession, which is incredibly important in an NFL game where you don't know how many possessions you get, and they're going to be able to get the ball out there. The more talented team, the more talented team on defense. I think it'll be close. It's going to be much closer than I think people would think, just based on the Ravens rolling in here being super hot. Um, but it's either going to be a shootout or it's going to be a defensive battle. I'm leaning more towards shootout. So I'm going to go with the Ravens. I got actually a specific score for this game. Ravens 38, Bucks 31. I think the Bucks are able to score. I just think that the Ravens figure it out and have the ball late in the game and kind of just take the air out of the ball with Derrick Henry and Lamar.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the Ravens win this one. But I think the key for the Buccaneers is how Baker plays against a team like this. And definitely like a player like Mike Evans, who honestly didn't have an impact in their last win this weekend. So I really want to see how guys like Mike Evans and Baker play against Baltimore's defense, which is really potent this season again. Like you said, I think the Lamar and Derrick Henry combination of the run game has just been top of the line. I don't think any team right now is going to stop it. I think they ride that train out. Zay Flowers, I think will have a big game too. He's kind of been underrated this season, not talked about as much because when you talk about the Ravens' offense is primarily Derrick Henry and Lamar. So give me a good game out of Zay Flowers. I think we'll see some struggles out of Tampa Bay, but nothing that's to concern them because I still think they're going to compete for their division, but I just think in the matchup wise, it favors Lamar and the Ravens. Obviously, playing in Tampa is a different story. It's not the easiest place to go and win at, but I right now I just like the matchup better on the side of the Ravens.
And one last thing on this game before we kind of get to our closing. Hallelujah, they used Mark Andrews. Finally, he is a viable tight end, or we'll see. We'll see. I'm not going to quite put him in my starting lineup yet, but he finally had some life, and that got me really excited because I don't look like a bonehead for drafting him anymore. But what we will see how they use him as they love their tight ends in Baltimore.
Yeah, I played against Mark Andrews and I lost. So happy for you, not happy for me. I won our dynasty league that we're in together. I won it last year and I've fallen to 3-3 this season. So the fact that Devon Achane, Kyron Williams, Rashad White and James Cook were all either on bye or out definitely killed me this week. Very frustrating for me. But yeah, hey, we move though. That's fantasy football. Now none of those guys are on buys for the most part. We can move on, but unless there's anything else you want to add, uh,
No, I think all good. I mean, I'm ready to watch some football.
Yeah, like I said, we just covered a great slate of weekend games. Definitely keep your eye on Green Bay, Houston, and obviously Minnesota, Detroit, amongst the other games. We had our college football show yesterday. So that's it from us from Sideline Signal. I'm Andrew. As always, thank you, Tyler, for joining me. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment if you want. We love to respond to people. We thank the viewers who tune in every week. If you want to follow us on TikTok, where we make more content there, our TikTok is at Sideline Signal. Make sure to like, comment, drop a follow. We love our fans. But other than that, this has been another episode of our NFL podcast. Thank you so much for listening and have a great rest of your night.